This first one is called Natural. If I say New Orleans, I must say orphan. Must parade it before all dirges, all Zydeco. 4 golden men mortgaged to the street, the filament of their soul, beignets and bee bread, panhandle on the dead. Big Ezekiel the First ruts in the yellow of their name like an organ, like crab fat. In winter, each becomes a street lamp. The wrought iron in the blood rusts bourbon through the eye. If I say New Orleans, I must number the things that do not drown. 20 shades of local purple, of local blended blue and red on black, the kind of fist paints. A levee of bottles, stained glass, an empty one for every child without a parent. The ways to wail in jazz, improvising heat, and weeping and grief to make a song a delta, a mouth, the Mississippi. The fat of one Tuesday floated like a flowered hearse through the streets. If I say New Orleans, I must speak of beads and my wife's body, her nipples, her clitoris, and the sun, the pleasure of the sky, its blue body so near to death, and the night that comes, its pearls of sweat thrown out when it is close. I must pray. This is the last parish, the last altar in America where something, food, remains holy. Even shit sanctifies the land. To arrive here, you must sink, must bow below the level of the ocean, the first priest of the world, and be christened. If I say New Orleans, I must mention being born. So I had a friend make a comment that I didn't look like I was the camping type. And so I didn't know if I should take that as a compliment or an insult. So this next poem is called Western Mountains. Somewhere west of Story, Wyoming, halfway up an abandoned fire lookout, my father-in-law, huffed with exhaustion and furrowed in the brow of the mountain, paused to lean on his knees and threw the stone of his voice against the granite. Get used to hiking, it's what your wife likes to do. It did not echo until now. 9,500 feet from the base, years like rubble below, her ahead by lengths, I only glimpse her shoulder bobbing between the continuous pines. Reaching the top arouses a summit in her that I fumble to bring back home to Maryland, where mountains are old and small. After climbing half a day, mountains stand more revealed but unchanged. Graveled with sweat and standing at the crown, I wonder, am I any higher than 5 years old on my father's shoulders? His diabetes thinned him to a peak, and I see, ridged against his body, against the horizon, bones of his boyhood. When he was still sleeved in Spanish, begging the TV to teach English. When his parents could not immigrate past their ignorance of my mother's skin and shipped him to Honduras for a summer to harvest every banana in the country. When he swore to walk back through Mexico or the Gulf to return. He grew. The years thickened in his skin. He found his way to rappel down without my mother. She spent years clinging to his dust. Ranges of climaxed earth continue west. I cannot pause, my youth released like my father's, pressure against the earth. Each year brings him closer to the ground, and I know I cannot climb down from his shoulders. So in the spirit of family, I'm going to read a couple of letters that I wrote to my brother. He's got a kind of strange name. His name is Rabu, so I thought that was fitting for poetry to have a strange name. So these are called Dear Rabu. Dear Rabu, I too believe prophets still emerge from wilderness, men with mouths, another husk, full of honey and locust, with words like an epistle. form an epistemology, word followed by everything else. When I imagine these men, they look like your alchemy of our parents. When I imagine wilderness, our childhood repeated like leaflets of propaganda. So talking to you makes language sick with memory. Dear Rabu, I too am sick with remembering and not remembering father. How strange. Brother, I've wanted to tell you, this past year, walking through a bombed-out house with my wife, my son still barricaded in her body, I did not weep, nor gagged with the thought of human ash, nor argued with the confusion of sun on us through a collapsed ceiling, nor dreamt fields pocked with heather overwhelming the rubbled drywall. Is that wrong? West Edmondson, Baltimore, or the West Bank, doesn't matter. All of these are a dismantled Zion, or another word for father. Dear Rabu, the fall here has grown short and mean. It's starting to claim disability. Like the seasons were aging, eclipsing godlike out of youth. In truth, it's me stumbling over 30 years old, and I can't stand the pity of lindens and ginkgos, their afterbirth shrugged on the concrete. I walk and crush. Relive is a verb we never do. The leaves don't hold color any longer than a man's orgasm. Everywhere I look, I see us as one child instead of two, and it is years ago, in Houston, where the only season is humidity. Dear Rabu, we were children, and teaching math to me, you said start with the rose as an exponent of earth. Stem and thorn, not dividend, but signed equal, color and scent on either side, determined greater than or less with tongues stacked against petals. This has made me different than other men. We were children, and in the Yucatan, visiting cousins, I could not speak to them. The only Spanish I knew was in my name. I could not kiss in their language. You said, stand next to father, then ask Sophia to dance, though she is the youngest. Watch if she bends in agreement as if rose was a verb. It is the only arithmetic needed to speak. This has made me different than other men. We were children, and before I could form a rose in my mouth, you taught me to draw pictures of Mom with hair, how you remembered her. You said, begin, unbroken lines. Think of her cheeks as petals covered with petals, flowing down from the top of the face until they stack. My first word was your name, and not theirs. This has made me different than other men.